You know Gandalf fell fighting a Balrog. But Tolkien's secret letters reveal why he had to die. For 10 days, Middle-earth's wisest wizard didn't just battle a demon, he battled himself. The Balrog's flames didn't just melt stone. They burned away every lie Gandalf ever told. What he found in the dark wasn't death. It was a truth so raw, Tolkien buried it for decades. Why did the Grey die so the White could live? This is Middle-earth Unveiled. Welcome, friend. It means the world that you're here. Let's journey through Tolkien's world together. Gandalf the Grey was more than a wandering wizard. He was a shepherd of hope. Sent to Middle-earth by the divine wisdom of the Valar, he walked among mortals not as a lord, but as a lantern in the gathering dark. For centuries, his laughter disarmed kings. His counsel steadied trembling hearts, and his presence whispered a promise. You are not alone. Yet beneath his humility thrummed a sacred restraint. Though born of ancient celestial fire, a Maya, like the Balrog itself, Gandalf was forbidden to confront Sauron's might with raw power. His strength lay in kindling courage, in stitching alliances from fraying threads. But even a being as timeless as he could not foresee how deeply his fate would entwine with the fragile souls he swore to protect. The Mines of Moria became his crucible. Here, in the suffocating dark, greed had clawed too deep, rousing a horror older than the mountains. The Balrog, Durin's bane, a Maya like Gandalf, yet warped by Morgoth's ancient malice, surged upward, a storm of flame and shadow. Its roar shook the stones, its whip cracked like thunder, heralding a doom not seen since the First Age. The Fellowship fled, their footsteps echoing panic, but Gandalf stood rooted. On the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, his staff flared, a fragile star against the abyss. You shall not pass, he thundered. Not a challenge, but a plea. A mortal's defiance from an immortal soul. The bridge shattered, the Balrog fell, and Gandalf, ensnared by its whip, hovered between life and oblivion. One breath, one choice. Let go, or doom them all. His fingers slipped. He fell. But in that fall, a greater design unfolded. Gandalf the Grey, humble, weary, bound by flesh, was unmade. The Balrog's fire scorched away his mortal shell, and in the void beyond death, he stood bare before Eru, the one who shaped the world. Here, he was reforged. Not as reward, but as necessity. I am Gandalf the White, he would declare, his voice now carrying the weight of both comet and crater. The Grey Pilgrim's gentle nudges had died in Moria. The White Rider would now wield authority like a blade. Yet his eyes, though brighter, held a shadow, a flicker of grief for the self he'd lost. But why did death bring about transformation? Why was this sacrifice the key? The answer lies in a truth Sauron, in his Tower of Pride, could never grasp. Power forged in pity outlasts power forged in dominion. It was pity that stayed Bilbo's hand, Gandalf would later say. And that has made all the difference. His rebirth was no mere upgrade. It was a paradox, a fusion of mercy and steel. But what toll did the Balrog's flames exact on his spirit? And as the White Rider, walking the razor's edge between Olorin the Maya and Gandalf Greyheim, does he still cherish the laughter of hobbits, the warmth of pipe smoke, the joy of being known? The road ahead will test him, not as a god, but as a guide who has touched the limits of both heaven and hell. The battle began in the suffocating bowels of the earth, where shadows clung like living things. Gandalf and the Balrog spiraled downward through Moria's crumbling halls, a necropolis of dwarven ambition and older, darker hungers. The wizard's staff cast frail light on walls, scarred by pickaxes and claw marks. Here, in the lightless deeps, the Balrog, a Maya of fire, once radiant, now a slave to Morgoth's ruin, surged upward, its flames devouring the air. Their duel was a symphony of opposites, one a hymn to destruction, the other a psalm of stubborn hope, but Gandalf refused to let the darkness claim its victory underground. With a roar that shook the roots of the mountain, he drove the Balrog higher, through skeletal tunnels, glacial fissures, and the fabled endless stair, until they erupted onto the spine of the misty mountains. The peak of Xiraxigil stabbed the heavens, its snows untouched by time. Here, eagles circled like judges. Here, the wind sang of elder days. This was no battlefield. It was an altar. For 10 days and nights, wizard and demon grappled on the precipice. Lightning split the sky. Their strikes mirrored the storm's fury. Gandalf's muscles burned. His staff splintered. The Balrog's whip coiled around his ankle, searing flesh and spirit. "You fear your own light," it taunted, flames licking at his resolve. "You cling to mortality like a child to a blanket." The true battle raged within. Every parry forced Gandalf to confront a harrowing truth. To win, he must release, not just his strength, but his very self. The Grey Wanderer, lover of pipeweed and hobbit gardens, would perish here. Could he surrender the joy of being Gandalf, the twinkle-eyed meddler, the teller of tales, to become something colder, sharper? The Valar had sent him to guide, not to rule. But what if guidance demanded kingship? He faltered. For a heartbeat, he saw Middle-earth's future. The Shire's green hills blackened, Rivendell's libraries ash, Samwise's garden choked with rot. The vision trembled, not from the Balrog's power, but from his own doubt. Then, clarity. Gandalf's choice was not between life and death, but between love and fear. To protect Frodo's stubborn courage, to spare a single hobbit laugh, he would burn. With a cry that echoed the music of the Ainur, he channeled every scrap of his being into his shattered staff and plunged it into the mountain's heart. Light erupted, a searing, sacred white, as Xiraxigil's peak split like a rotten log. The Balrog shrieked, its flames snuffed by the raw song of creation, and fell. Gandalf followed. His mortal form fell, broken, upon the rocks, while his spirit, luminous, unbroken, lingered. And in the void between worlds, a voice beyond the Valar, older than the world itself, spoke, "You have given all, so all shall be renewed." Death, for a being like Gandalf, was not an end, but a threshold. When he awoke, snow cradling his bones and sunlight blazing in his veins, he was no longer grey. He was white, a storm wrapped in skin, a blade sheathed in wisdom. Yet his first words, whispered to the wind, were not of power or prophecy. "I miss my hat," he said. The road ahead would demand ruthlessness, but in that quip, a spark of the old Gandalf flickered, a reminder that even gods, when they love the world, leave pieces of themselves behind. The world fell silent. High on Xiraxigil's peak, Gandalf's body lay cradled in snow, pale as marble. His fingers curled around the splintered shards of his staff, but his spirit drifted in the timeless halls beyond the circles of the world, a realm untouched by light or shadow, where even the Valar could not follow. Memories flickered like distant stars. Bilbo's trembling hand offering him the ring, Frodo's quiet resolve in Bag End, Theoden's hollow eyes, clouded by Saruman's venom. Had he guided them well? Or had he, like Saruman, mistaken wisdom for control? The void whispered, not with words, but with absence. The absence of pipe smoke, of birdsong, of the Shire's lazy rivers. For the first time in centuries, Gandalf felt small, a spark adrift in the dark. In life, he had been Olorin, a Maya of the Valar, cloaked in mortal flesh as Gandalf the Grey. His mission, to kindle hope, not command it, to mend, not master. But Sauron, his ancient kin, a Maya once radiant, now a tyrant of ash, had long abandoned such restraint. Power, to the Dark Lord, was a fist. To Gandalf, it was a seed. Yet here, in death, doubt gnawed. Had he planted enough seeds? Had his gentle nudges truly countered the tempest of Sauron's will? The void sharpened. Visions erupted. Aragorn, kingless, leading rangers to their graves in Mordor's shadow. Galadriel's mirror cracking, her light choked by despair. The Mad Steward's flames consuming his son, Faramir, on a pyre of pride. The ring, smug and cold, slipping onto Gollum's finger once more. You hesitated, hissed a voice, not the Balrog's, but his own. You cherished Middle-earth too much to risk it. To lead, you must rule. To save them, you must break them. Gandalf's spirit recoiled. Was this truth, or the void's mockery? He had seen what ruling wrought, Saruman's Tower of Lies, Denethor's madness. Yet if gentleness doomed the world, was mercy not a sin? Then, light. It came not as a blaze, but as a single note. Pure, clear. The first tone of the music of the Ainur. The void trembled. Before him stood a presence beyond form, beyond thought, yet radiating a father's sorrow and a sculptor's pride. Mithrandir. The name, Elvish, grey pilgrim, echoed like a benediction. You fear your love for them is weakness, spoke Eru Ilúvatar, his voice the rumble of mountains being born. But it is the lens through which I see them. You fell not for certainty, but for hope's fragile thread. That is why you rise. Gandalf's spirit burned, not with pain, but purging. The Grey's doubts, his mortal joys, dissolved like mist. In their place surged a terrible clarity, the White Wizard's mantle, heavy as a crown. Go, Olorin, not as a conqueror, but as a shepherd of wolves. Snow melted beneath him. Breath returned. Gandalf gasped, his renewed body shuddering, not with cold, but with the shock of a soul thrust back into clay. His robes, once grey, now gleamed like fresh snowfall under moonlight. Power thrummed in his veins, a forge heat that could level cities. Yet when he touched his chest, he mourned. The Grey's heartbeat, a steady, mortal rhythm, was gone. Reborn, he stood, not as a god, but as a vessel. The White Rider's power was undeniable, but his first thought was not of armies or strategy. Will Frodo trust me now? Will I still laugh? Eru's gift was no reward. It was a test, for Gandalf's greatest trial lay not in fighting Sauron, but in wielding this newfound authority without repeating Saruman's hunger or Sauron's pride. The path ahead demanded a blade's edge, mercy without indulgence, resolve without ruthlessness. But as Gandalf descended the mountain, his staff glowing like a captured star, a single question lingered in the wind. Can wisdom tempered by heaven still cherish the laughter of hobbits, the stubbornness of gardeners, the courage of small hands holding rings? So, why did Gandalf turn from grey to white? Well, he fell not for power, but for purity. The Grey was a teacher, a wanderer cloaked in humility. But to defeat a shadow, one must become a mirror. Sauron, a Maya like him, chose dominion. Gandalf chose devotion. His sacrifice on the bridge, his duel on the peak, these were not ends, but alchemy. The white is not a promotion. It is a confession. True strength lies in service. In dying for those who cannot fathom his grace, Gandalf proved that light, when surrendered, becomes limitless. Eru clad him in white, not to crown a hero, but to arm a parable. The meekest fire, tended by love, outshines the mightiest inferno. The grey was a friend. The white is a vow. To fight, not with Middle-earth, but for it, even when it forgets his name. This has been Middle-earth Unveiled. Thank you for spending your time with me. Next time, we'll delve deep into how Tolkien viewed mortality and everlasting life. See you next time.